Welcome to Virtue and Victory, a practical guide of Stoic virtues to triumph in chess and life. Adam Farr is a father, entrepreneur, aspiring Stoic, and amateur philosopher. Douglas Wong is a chess enthusiast, Stoic in training, and passionate about finding ways for us all to be at our best selves. Please welcome your hosts, Adam Farr and Douglas Wong.
Welcome back to Virtue and Victory. This is the podcast where chess meets life and philosophy. I'm Douglas Wong, and I'm with Adam Farr. Today, we're diving into a fascinating intersection. It's the journey of a pawn in chess and the wisdom of Stoic philosophy. How does a humble pawn, the weakest piece on the board, embody lessons of intentionality and thoughtfulness? And how can those lessons guide us in life and in business?
Doug, so good to be here again with you. A lot of gratitude. This week you went out of your way. You're one of the most intentional guys. You just mentioned being intentional. One of the most intentional guys I know. So I'm going to throw some gratitude your way. You sent me a book, How Will You Measure Your Life? Clayton Christensen, the late Clayton Christensen, James Allworth, and Karen Dillon. Really appreciate you taking time, energy, effort to send me that book. One of the passages I read that had me reflecting this week, very simple sentence on page 15. How do fundamental theories relate to finding happiness in life? It was really interesting little sentence that struck me. I reread it multiple times. I think that's really what we're here talking about, right? As we look at how we can help others thrive in their life, as we help others think about how they can live their best life, it comes down to theories. It comes down to what we choose to believe is going to be good for us. So starting with gratitude towards you for taking the time, effort, energy to send me that book. I'm halfway through. I'll be done by tomorrow with the book. Just wanted to thank you for taking the time to be intentional. We like to start these with gratitude. We've got some examples in life of where gratitude is a very powerful motivator, a very powerful emotion, a very powerful setting of the tone. You think about book one from Meditations, Marcus Aurelius. The entirety of book one is really him thanking a number of people that positively influenced his life, right? Just from the very beginning. His first statement of gratitude from book one, verse one, from my grandfather Verus, I learned good morals and the government of my temper. Very, very, very publicly, without knowing it would be public, starting Meditations with gratitude, an entire chapter of it. That's a way I would like to live my life, is showing a lot of gratitude. There's a lot of science behind the emotion behind gratitude, and how when we express gratitude, the things just happen in life in a much more pleasant, meaningful way. So I'll start there, and then gratitude, of course, to listeners. We do this for our listeners. We do this to help teach the strategies that we've found beneficial to us. And just wanted to say thank you to each and every one of our listeners that are here with us. Appreciate the support and appreciate the time and energy being put into listening to us. So today, like you were saying, we're going to explore how the principles of Stoicism align with the deliberate path of the pawn. You've got several examples, which I really, really enjoy always listening to the examples that you share from famous chess games and how we tie those into Stoic stories and then how we tie them into life to live a life well lived. So again, whether you're a chess enthusiast, a Stoic aficionado, or someone looking for deeper meaning in achieving goals, making sure that you hold up your end of the bargain of your New Year's resolutions, whatever it is. Maybe you're just looking for a way to kill some time. Whatever your purpose is, we're excited to be here with you and excited to talk through the pawn's journey, chess, Stoicism, and the art of intentional progress.
Yeah, Adam, I appreciate you very much, and thank you for kicking us off with gratitude. I mean, that's why we're here, right? We love sharing ideas and concepts that have positively impacted us, and we want to share that with other people. I appreciate you bringing us back full circle with that. And yeah, like we're chess enthusiasts, we're Stoics. So I'm really excited about this conversation and starting off with the pawn, right? In chess, and I've heard this a lot, and this I'm guilty of this as well as a beginner, like basically discarding the pawn. Listen, the pawn is slow to move. It can only move forward. It captures a little funny to the side. After its first move, it can only move one square at a time. It's not flashy. I think if you ask people what their favorite piece is, often would not be the pawn, probably the queen, because she's a very powerful piece, or the knight, or the bishop. But the pawn is unique in its own way. It has the potential to promote, or the way I like to think about it, transform into any piece it desires on the board once it gets to the eighth rank. So it has to get to the other end of the board, which means it's going to be a challenge. I love it because I love an underdog story. And I really want to highlight a few, and I say this with a lot of intention, beautiful chess games that really highlight the importance of pawns. And simply, and this is another concept in chess, right? Sometimes the threat of an action is more potent than the actual action. So simply the threat of a pawn promotion can stun your opponent and lead to decisive, brilliant victories. So the first one that comes to mind, because one of my favorite chess players, which I should ask you, Adam, do you have a favorite chess player?
Well, I will say Magnus, especially this last week with everything going on, definitely somebody that I'm watching very, very closely. Obviously, Kasparov comes to mind, one of the more famous ones. But Magnus this week has been very, very interesting over the last 7 to 10 days to watch, to observe, both from a Stoic, from a business leader, from a person perspective. It's been really interesting for me to observe him. So I'm really interested in some of your thoughts there, but excited to hear what stories you're going to tell us today.
Kasparov is one of my favorite players. We both read the book. Yeah, Life Imitates Chess. So it was interesting how he wrote that title. And Magnus, absolutely one of the best chess players of all time as well, who actually was a protege of Kasparov. If you didn't know that, Kasparov was an early coach to Magnus Carlsen. And yeah, current events, we'll call it Genesgate. I'd be interested in hearing the audience sound off, right? Because there's definitely different perspectives on what's going on. I think one perspective is swagger and the ability to influence. Others may see it as kind of following rules and getting in line. And so I'm very interested, and we can definitely talk more about that. And I'd love to hear everybody's favorite chess player, and we can have a debate about those things. But the first thing that comes to mind, Gary Kasparov, brilliant. I definitely encourage anybody to read his book. But he played a game. It's known as Kasparov's Immortal Game against Topalov. Was in 1999, and I think the biggest feature was middle game play, where Kasparov was leading to get to a pass pawn. So pass pawn is when you have a pawn advanced in the board and there's nothing on its flank to defend it. So another pawn is not on the side of it. Pass pawn sometimes can be a weakness, but especially as you get into the middle game and transition to the end game, they're very important, and you can leverage them, again, trying to get them to promotion. So Kasparov had made some strategic sacrifices leading to this pass pawn. And he activated his pieces. There was a lot of exchange. So it was a pretty exciting game. But on the D file, he had a D pawn, which is important because it's in the middle of the board. He supported the pawn with his bishop and his queen, not the other way around.
Hmm.
And tempo in chess is when basically you have a step on your opponent. You have either you're threatening a piece or you're just a move ahead of them. We call that a tempi or tempo. And Topalov had to move his forces or dedicate all his pieces to stop the pass pawn, because if that pass pawn, and we're talking about the top levels of chess here, you get an extra queen, that's just a unsurmountable advantage that you have. And he really overwhelmed Topalov, who was known as a brilliant tactician, leading to a spectacular mate. And I bring that game up because it does highlight the importance that pawns are a dynamic asset, especially as you get, I mentioned, the middle game, and I would say transition middle game to the end game. Because when you're in the middle game of chess, you should be thinking, what end game am I going to get into? And you create these possibilities. And this one was a game-winning pass pawn. Huge. I see. Maybe you have some thoughts there.
I just really like that story, and as you were telling it, I was reflecting on life. You and I
Yeah.
have been fortunate enough to find a high level of success in the corporate world in our professional lives. We've led very, very large teams for very, very large organizations. And we both have taken a very similar approach to entry level employees or entry level team members, right? And one could argue that maybe we could look for a moment as an entry level team member as a pawn, right? If we think
Okay.
about advancing through life, advancing through your career, I think depending on how you relate, we all are a pawn at some point in our life, right? And I'm talking about
Yeah.
positionally, and there's no negative connotations to being a pawn as a team member. One of the things you said was how the much more, for all intents and purposes, powerful pieces were supporting the pawn, right? As the chief operating officer of a very, very large organization, having risen through the ranks over a couple of decades long career, I was in a position to support a lot of people. And one of my favorite things was to support the entry level team members that were just starting their career. Story after story of where I jumped in to help support. I'm not tooting my own horn. I'm just telling it because
Yeah.
it had me reflecting. And this week, actually, just yesterday, one of my team members, who was an entry level team member who grew in his career with us while I was the head of our Colombia operation during the pandemic, reached out to me and said, Adam, you were the best leader we had in Colombia. Forever grateful for your knowledge and support. Wishing you success in all your projects this 2025 and blessings for you and your loved ones.
That's amazing.
And I don't share that for any other reason than to highlight we don't know what impact we're going to have. Sometimes all we need to do is to support the pawn, to support our team members, regardless of their position. Right? We can always be kind. We can always be grateful. We can always find a way to be kind and to be grateful. And it reminds me, honestly, of a quote from Norman Vincent Peale, who was one of my favorites. I read his book since I was very, very young. Power of Positive Thinking has had a huge impact in my life. But one of his quotes is, "The way to happiness: keep your heart free from hate, your mind from worry, live simply, expect little, give much.
Mm.
Scatter sunshine, forget self, think of others."
Love it.
And in a way, that's what you were just talking about, right? It's supporting that pawn. And as a Stoic, I step back and I reflect on that. And that's really what Stoicism is all about, right?
Yeah.
Living in harmony with nature, realizing that you're going to be met, as Marcus Aurelius said, with stubborn people, with frustrated people, with angry people. Just expect to be met with that, but don't let it change who you are. Focus on being kind, focus on supporting people, focus on helping others. Tend to your internal garden, as we talked about in the last episode, and life will absolutely work out. And you'll get to feel really, really good as you're living through this thing we call life. It's just a powerful,
Yeah.
powerful. concept, powerful thought process. Really appreciate you taking the time to share that experience, that chess experience, and I'm grateful to you for sharing that because it triggered a lot
No,
of
I
thoughts.
appreciate you bringing it back to life, and I think that's what servant leadership is about. And some people forget about that, right? A couple of things I always think about is the legacy that we leave as people, as leaders, is the fire that we fan in others. If you get that, you make somebody else better. That's a beautiful legacy. And everything you mentioned, right? Being kind, uh, doing the right thing, helping others. Those are all intentional choices, and that's what we're talking about. Being intentional, making choices that drive a better impact. And like pieces in the chessboard, we're simply better together as people, as community, as neighbors, as teams. And the fact is, that's how we met. Adam is while you were in your previous role in the previous chapter, we were actually putting together a combined service team, and it was important to both of us. It was really important to me. I was like, hey, we have a new partner here. We have a new team of frontline employees that will be interacting with mutual customers. A couple of things I wanted to achieve. I want to meet these people. I want to see their space, their environment. I want to see the people. I want to share with them our philosophy on how we drive great customer service. And that's how we met. I think we both made an impression on each other, and we've continued to work together since then. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Uh, so we mentioned Magnus Carlsen a few times. We got Gene's Gate going on. Uh, he's the highest rated chess player in the world, has been for some time. I think we started appropriately with Kasparov, again, his protege, Magnus Carlsen, who went on to beat him and later become world champion, was playing Fabiana Caruana, which is most of the time the U.S. #1 player in the world, and they're playing in the World Chess Championship game. I think the highlight of the game was pawn structure and how the promotion of the pawn again. Carlsen, he used pawn breaks and to create imbalances. So pawn breaks is when the position is locked up and you're moving a pawn to influence your opponent's play. So pawn break, you move a pawn up, the pawn might get captured and you capture again. Usually you're breaking the formation somehow. Fabiano was so overwhelmed, and Fabiano is one of the toughest players. I would say one of the most stoic players that I know. You don't see outbursts from him. He usually, and he understands the game really well. He resigned, and he did not go on to win the championship. In fact, in that matchup, Carlsen defended his world championship crown.
If I'm going to succeed, I need this pawn to succeed, and I think that's a powerful concept, right? When you think about the pawn's journey and how it mirrors life's challenges, we're not born a queen, we're not born a king, we're not born a rook. We have to work our way up in life, and we have to be willing to work our way up. You and I both have spent time working our way up in corporate America. I started decades ago as a customer service representative, right, for a very large organization, financial institution, and I worked my way up in a matter of 15 years or so to chief operating officer at a Fortune 4 company. It's pretty incredible. And again, I'm not tooting my own horn. I'm just sharing that because there were people along the way willing to help me, willing to believe in me, willing to give me a shot. Obviously, I had to work very, very hard. I always had a very high work ethic. I had to be smart. I had to be strategic. I had to be thoughtful. I had to take risks. I had to do all the things people talk about in every business book you'll ever read. The reality is I had a lot of people helping me along the way, and I'm so grateful to all of them, and I continue to be grateful to all of them. I'll tell you, the richest blessings I have in my life are the relationships. I have some very, very deep relationships, and I have so much gratitude for all of them, for being friends, for being family, for being kind, for picking up the phone and calling me, for reaching out. I mean, there's just a ton of gratitude for the people I have in my life. And I hope I can be that type of influence for others. And what I would encourage folks to think about is Really, how are we spending time, as we talked about in the last episode, tending to our garden so that we can keep our heart free from hate, our mind free from worry? How can we live a little more simpler? How can we expect little? How can we give much? And how can we scatter sunshine, forget ourselves, and think of others? And as we do that, I can tell you, you will accomplish what you want to accomplish in life. And I think that's really, really hard for people to grasp that. But I would say just give it a shot. Give it a try. Try it for a day, then another day, then a week, then a month, then a year. And then it becomes a part of who you are. And what I think you'll find is just an immense amount of joy in how you're living your life. I would say that as we think about the pawn to king journey or pawn to queen journey, we learn to focus on what is in our control, to act with purpose, and to stay the course despite any obstacle that comes our way. I'm not saying we shouldn't pivot. I'm not saying we shouldn't change course. But what I am saying is we need to be consistent. We need to be thoughtful. We need to act with purpose and stay the course. And in quiet determination, there's some beautiful things that can happen. There's a lot of Stoic principles in that. One of the stories that I would tell very briefly, Zeno of Cyntium, who's largely credited with being the founder of Stoicism, in a very, very bad storm, he lost everything. So for all intents and purposes, Zeno owned a logistics company, a shipping company. He had multiple ships, and he had all the ships out to sea, and there was a huge storm, unanticipated, unexpected, and he lost everything. And he said that in losing everything, he gained everything. That's a very interesting perspective. Think of maybe somebody today with a Amazon DPS business or a Uber fleet of transportation vehicles. And let's say in one fell swoop, they lost everything and had no insurance. That would devastate a lot of people, right? And it's not unlike what happened to Zeno of Cyntium. Zeno steps back and says, what does this mean? What am I supposed to learn from this? That's a really, really powerful thing. Zeno losing his business, losing his livelihood, lost everything, stepped back and said, as he reflected years later, when I lost everything, I gained everything. And what he meant by that is he had a time to step back and reevaluate everything. He had a moment to step back and say, okay, in that reflection, realized that he had everything he always had because he looked inwardly. He looked into his internal garden and said, what do I need to discover? What is this trying to teach me? What do I need to learn? And there's some absolute power in that, to step back and be grateful in a moment of chaos and what could be seen as catastrophe. He stepped back and said, what do I need to learn? There must be something here for me to learn. And he goes on to create what is now known as Stoicism, one of the most influential philosophies of the history of the world, or in the history of the world. It's a fascinating thing. And so you want to talk about setbacks. You want to talk about challenges. You want to talk about taking those challenges and pivoting them into something. That's what I would encourage folks to do, is step back, and instead of feeling sorry for ourselves, instead of being sad, instead of being frustrated, let's be glad. Let's be grateful and say there's something more here for me to learn, and there could be something great for me to accomplish. I don't understand why it's happened. That's the whole Stoic concept, amor fati, right? The love of fate. Who am I to be angry at the gods for what has happened to me, for what has come upon me? I'm grateful. There's a lot of gratitude because it's not for me to decide. The fates have already decided it. The gods have decided it. I am but a vessel to carry forward whatever that plan is. And I need to be ready for that, right? I need to be ready to carry that forward. I need to be ready to step up to that challenge. I need to be at peace so that I can listen to those thoughts as they come in. I need to be observing nature, the natural order of things. I need to be prioritizing justice, moderation, courage, and wisdom, so that I can be ready for those things that life needs me to do. That's the love of fate. That's amor fati. That's a very, very powerful thing.
Yeah, it is powerful. A lot of lessons. Um, Setbacks, challenges at the time we're going through them don't seem fun, but those where we learn a lot of lessons. We learn who we are, who we're not, and I think experience. Right, we both have experience with startups. So if we're talking about in the business world, or you mentioned kind of we're all pawns at one time, starting with nothing or limited resources. That's similar to the pawn stories that we talked about. So everything you do needs to be intentional. You can't just float along the way. Every move, every decision has to align with your goals. Sometimes it's not flashy. We talk a lot about in the startup world, bootstrap. You've heard me mention a lot of times in meetings like, what's your cash burn rate, right? Like, how many resources are we reserving our resources? We're trying to be effective. Steve Jobs, love him or hate him, and I love this quote, right? Deciding what not to do is just as important as deciding what to do. And to me, that's chess, that's stoicism. I think it's a very important question. And kind of bringing it back to chess a little bit, because I want to prevent the pitchforks and the burning flames coming at me, because how can we talk about chess without mentioning Bobby Fischer? Uh, and Bobby Fischer, famous for uh, beating Boris Spassky for the World Chess Championship. This was at the height of the Cold War. In Game 6, Fischer played a beautiful game. By the way, he started in that series down, um, but he played a beautiful pawn structure game, and it's today it's used. That game is used to teach people about pawn structure, and I think not sure how much people know about Fischer, but in this game very particularly, he was not aggressive. He was not reckless. He built a foundational structure which created space, and drove his wins. It was actually a lesson in patience, and I think that exemplifies the Stoic discipline. Um, and also, I think in this same vein, because this is something I'm improving in my games, by the way. My recent games, I usually come out of the openings in pretty good shape. I get a little bit impatient, and I'm trying to go for like the juggler in my games, and then I positionally start losing and getting into more complications towards the end game. So we can learn patience. That's actually my mantra now. Just be patient. Allow the game to come to you. Make sure you're making good moves. Capablanca, um, again, top chess figure, had mastery of his games, and where his pawns. I mean, a lot of his games are considered very beautiful. Beautiful. He did bond promotions, but Capablanca's end games are known as a symbol of just strategic brilliance. He would often, and we mentioned this as a theme already, sacrifice other pieces to create pathways for the pawns. Because once that pawn gets to the other side of the board, it could be anything. And by the way, queens are very, very powerful, but it could be a rook, it could be a knight. There's some more recent games that we might not have time to get into now, where we call it under promotion, where they don't become a queen, they become like a knight and lead to an automatic checkmate. But I think that's beautiful, and I think that's very stoic. Sacrificing immediate maybe desires, um, making those sacrifices for long term gain, and really, again, I think staying focused on the overall goal. That's super
No,
important.
yeah, totally agree. A lot of important concepts there. It reminds me of what Epictetus taught us, right? When
Mm-hmm.
he talked about asking yourself or saying to yourself, what would you be?
Mm-hmm.
And then do what you have to do to be that. That is how you stay focused on the end goal, right? I think we sacrifice the end goal all too often for short-term gains. Happens all
Mm-hmm.
the time. Whether you want to spend 15 years becoming a doctor so you can help people heal, whether you spend 3 days taking a course in order to get some certification. Well, there's a lot of different concepts that we could lean into, right? But whatever it is you're looking to be, stop talking about it and go do it. Go become it. Right.
Yeah.
And in fact, Marcus Aurelius, he talked about this a lot. He said, stop arguing about what it means to be a good man and just go be one. And you can say, stop arguing about what it means to be a good mother, a good teacher, a good doctor, and just go be one. Right. And
Actions are louder than words.
I was just going to say that, right? You talk about the actions.
Yeah.
Everything is taking an action. Take
Yeah.
the action. Do the thing, whatever that is, whatever it is. Whether your New Year's resolution is to lose weight, to be a better father, to be a better husband, to be a better mother, to be a better wife. Stop talking about it and just go do it and help others, right, along the way. Be kind, simplify things, help people. If you have
Yeah.
an ability to help, just do it.
Again, I want to. These are all choices that we have the power to make instead of something happening to us. And when you were talking, Adam, it reminded me of a couple of things that I would say a turning point in my life. I'm a thinker, so I think a lot. I think there's a good light side to that. There's a dark side to that. Once upon a time, I was a bit more of a worrier. Um, but when I was able to break through this barrier of what are the things I can control, what are the things I can't control, and just kind of shedding the stuff I can't control, I became a better person. I unloaded quite a burden. I had a friend would say to me once, worrying is like sitting in a rocking chair. You can go back and forth, but you're not going to get anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And we think about uh, the concepts that we talked about so far: memento mori, also tending to your garden. We can daydream, we can think about these things, but if we're not taking action on doing these things, you'll never get there. And to me, when I think about in the business world, we talk about supporting our teams, our organizations. When I think about leadership, it's modeling the way. What does good look like? And that means we need to roll up our sleeves and do the thing so people understand that doing the thing is important, not pontificating, right? Kind of sitting in our office or whatever, the ivory tower, and just, making decisions. By the way, that's important, strategic thinking and having goals. But a lot of times that I was able to get to a point where you bring teams along with you is when you show them how to do things, and it's action oriented. That's where the action is louder than the words. I can tell you how to clean dishes or make an empanada better. Let me show you.
Super powerful. And you're absolutely right. Whether it's making an empanada, doing dishes, running a Fortune 4 company, running a large operation, whatever that might be, it really boils down to doing, taking action, right? Focusing on what you can control, letting go of distractions, and acting with purpose. Book 4, verse 2 of Meditations, let no act be done without a purpose. So I'm going to encourage the listeners, I'm going to encourage you and I to step back and ask ourselves for just a moment, what is our purpose? Whether that's in life, whether that's today, whether that's next week, what is the purpose of this thing we're doing? And if that purpose doesn't align back to a goal you've set or a priority you have in your life, I'm going to ask you to reflect on why you're doing it. So what is your purpose? As I reflect on how I've tended to my garden this week, I've spent a lot of time studying. I get up extra early in the morning and read my books. I do my studying. I take my notes. And then once the day starts for the rest of the world, long after I've been awake usually, I move with purpose. I apply the lessons I'm learning. And when I make a mistake, I step back and I remind myself I am but a man, I am but a person, and I will make mistakes, and I'm going to do better next time. And I'm going to have grace with myself, knowing that I have a purpose in mind for what needs to be accomplished, and I'm going to stay focused on that, and I'm going to control what I can control. my thoughts, my judgments, my desires, my actions. And so I'm going to encourage each of us to think about how we've tended to our internal gardens over the last several days and weeks. Are we acting with purpose? Spend some time thinking about what is our purpose? What are we looking to accomplish? And align our priorities and our actions back to that purpose. Don't be afraid to take a little bit of risk. Don't be afraid to make a mistake. Don't let the mistake be a major setback. And if it is a major setback, just realize we are but human and we will make mistakes. Focus on what you can control. Let go of the distractions. Be kind. Help others. Be thoughtful. Remember the quote we talked about earlier, the way to happiness. Keep your heart free from hate, your mind free from worry. Live simply, expect little, give much, scatter sunshine, forget yourself, and think of others.
I love it.
And as we do that, I know we will find success. Help others, and you'll accomplish everything that you want to accomplish in life. I guarantee it.
Yeah, I love it. In fact, when you and I were thinking about this project that we now call Virtue and Victory, those two words together summarize what you just shared, right? I think if you're virtuous, so I think, understanding the virtues, and we'll continue to have discussions about that, it will lead to victory in any application. Be intentional like the pawn. So be the pawn, know your end game. That's memento mori. We'll have the end in mind. Align your actions to that purpose. And you mentioned setbacks. In fact, I would actually challenge folks to embrace their setbacks, because what I always ask myself, sometimes not all the time in the moment, but when I get to the Zen place, what did I learn?
Mm-hmm.
Like pawns on the chessboard that are blocked, captured, and sometimes overlooked, when they persist, they can become the most powerful piece on the board, and in a shocking, beautiful way, kind of like butterflies, which we talked about in tending your garden. When butterflies aren't always butterflies, they start off as caterpillars. People don't always like caterpillars, and sometimes it's not the sexy thing, but small, steady progress leads to transformation. I think in today's world where we kind of maybe lack the patience for those things, it's even more important. It's going to give you the edge, quite frankly.
Yeah. Yeah, it's incorporating a growth mindset, right? And instead of having to reflect, you'll get to a point where you'll immediately as things are happening, you'll ask yourself, what is it that I'm supposed to learn? That's the love of faith. That's a more fati, right? It's saying, in the moment,
Mm-hmm.
I might not know why this is happening. I might not know why I'm delayed at this cash register. I might not know why I'm stuck in traffic. I might not know why I'm getting pulled over and getting a speeding ticket. Although you know why, because you were speeding. I don't know why things are happening. There's a lot of things that happen in life that I don't need to try and explain, or I don't need to try and find a reason for. What I need to do is step back and say, what am I supposed to learn here? Who am I to argue with the gods why things are happening? That's not my job. It's not my job. Growth mindset, incorporate it as things are happening, not after the fact, and you'll find a lot of peace in your life. And by having peace in your life, like we talked about last time, you'll be able to be kinder. You talked about people struggling to sleep because they don't have peace. Find the peace by working on and tending to your internal garden, by being kind, by helping others accomplish what they want to accomplish. You will always accomplish everything you want to accomplish in life.
Wisdom for sure. And I think it was a great conversation, Adam. Thank you. Lots of gratitude towards you and again, the audience. Thank you for joining us on this journey through chess. Hope you really enjoyed the stories and how we tie that back to Stoicism and vice versa. If you enjoyed this discussion, please subscribe. It lets us know that you're interested in the content. We love the feedback. In fact, if you hit us up in the comments and share some feedback with us, reach out to you, and we'll work to get you some virtue and victory swag, and also get some additional information from you. And share it with someone who you think would benefit from these lessons and want to engage with you. As always, keep moving forward, one square at a time. We'll see you next time. Thank you.
Thank you.